Period tracking apps are the fourth most popular category of health apps downloaded by adults. They range from simple tracking tools to apps that use AI, biometric data, and hormone testing at home to predict your cycle. Some of them are brilliant, some of them are dangerously inaccurate, and some of them are collecting your data that you would never agree to share if you knew what they were actually doing with it. I'm Christina, I'm a doctor, and for over a year I've been researching women's health apps. Today we're covering the questions that I get asked the most, so stay to the end because question 7 is the one that most women get wrong. So let's get into it. How accurate are period tracking apps really? So this question is first for a reason, because the answer usually surprises women. Most apps are accurate at predicting the first day of your menstrual cycle about 50% of the time. One study even showed that of the remaining 50%, 70% of those were later than when the woman's cycle actually started. Period tracking apps are notoriously not very accurate. They are also significantly less dependable when it comes to predicting ovulation, and that's really important. So most period apps predict your period based on a 28-day cycle. In actual fact, less than 20% of women have a 28-day menstrual cycle. And that means for the majority of women, particularly if you're trying to predict ovulation, those predictions can be grossly inaccurate. Studies have also shown for half of women, the length of cycle can vary by 5 days, month to month. The other thing is, if you signed up for this app, you're continuing to provide your information. So it's not even offering you accurate predictions, but it's harvesting your information, something that company can then use. So some ovulation-based apps will use more fertility awareness-based training for the app. So for example, they'll ask you to take your body temperature at home, to monitor your cervical mucus, as well as do home urine testing, and they are more accurate, but they also require more input and information from you. So my take on period trackers, if you're just looking for general awareness and information, some of them will be quite good, but in terms of fertility or predicting ovulation, then I would definitely be more particular. I wouldn't rely on your standard period tracking app, but it's something I'll come back to in question 3. Is it safe to use a period app as contraception? Okay, I'm going to be very direct with this one because this is actually a patient safety issue. No purely calendar-based period app or tracker should be used for contraception. Most of the evidence that you'll see online regarding an app and its failure rate when it comes to contraception is research that's been produced by the app itself. There's a conflict of interest. And because there is that lack of evidence, we would never recommend that you solely use an app for contraception. There is one exception to this. It's an app called Natural Cycles, which is CE marked in Europe, FDA cleared in the USA, and is a recognized medical device. So it uses basal body temperature readings and has clinician involvement. Even Natural Cycles has a typical use failure rate of 6.5%. It requires a lot of daily input and it's not suitable for everybody. So if you're using a period app as your main type of contraception and you're not using anything else, then you need to speak to your GP and or your sexual health clinic. It's really important. Question 3, can these apps actually help me get pregnant? Yes, they can. Apps can help you get pregnant, but with some important caveats. Tracking apps over numerous cycles can be helpful for you to see the pattern that's emerging in your cycles and also for you to be able to predict your ovulation window. Like I said previously, I wouldn't probably fully rely on the app's predictions, but I think it's helpful to have an app if it provides some decent other pieces of educational information, and also if it provides that tracking in a way that's easy for you. But always listen to your own body. I definitely know of women who've said tracking apps have been grossly inaccurate for them and that their body felt something different. Always listen to your body first. Apps that include sort of temperature testing or hormone testing at home, like Clue or Ovia or Flow, are more useful for conception planning than basic trackers. The most important thing to understand is that an app is a tool, not a diagnosis. And so if you've been trying to conceive for 12 months or more and things are not moving forward, or you've been trying to conceive for 6 months if you're aged 35 years or over, go and see your GP or a fertility specialist. Trying to adjust app settings or relying on an app is not a great way to go. An app doesn't replace specialist input when it comes to your fertility. What happens to my data and who can see it? This is where it gets really uncomfortable, and as a doctor is the thing that I feel incredibly strongly about. Period apps collect some of your most sensitive health data. I'm talking about your periods, when you've had sex, your types of sexual activity, contraception that you're on, your pregnancy status, your sexual health status, your moods, your diet, even whether you've had unprotected sex. This is sensitive, intimate, personal health data. Research has found that many women's health apps share this information with third parties, including marketing and sales teams, legal teams, insurance companies, data analytics companies, and so it goes on. Some apps have been found to link health data with browsing activity. The privacy policies are written in ways that are deliberately difficult to understand. Here's why everything changed in 2022. When Roe versus Wade was overturned, legal teams raised concerns that period tracking data could be subpoenaed and used by legal teams in states where abortion is prohibited. That is not hypothetical, that is a genuine legal risk. So before you go ahead and download any app, ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, does it store the data on my device or is it being stored on the cloud? Number 2, does it clearly state that it doesn't share your data with third parties? And then number 3, is it clear about how it deals with legal data? So how does it share your data with legal and government teams? From our research, the safest apps at the moment that will protect your data are Yuki and Drip. You can find a full list of our app assessments at sheranked.com. I'll drop a link in the descriptions. Flow versus Clue, which is better? I get asked those questions so much, and it's one of the reasons why I'm glad that we have an independent reviewing platform. So She Ranked systematically reviews apps based on a scientific framework. So we look at the app's privacy, we look at whether it's medically accurate, whether it's accessible for all users, whether it's been ethically built, and also what is the behavioural impact on women if they use this app. So we reviewed both Flow and Clue back in 2025, but again in 2026, and this is our current review. So just looking at our review, Flow does use medically reviewed information and it helps users to understand their cycle. But our team found that their historical issues with how they use women's health information was problematic. We obviously saw them over the news in 2025, where there were concerns about the use of menstrual data along with Meta and Google. On top of that, were design patterns that users find manipulative and excluding. Some of the language isn't very inclusive. The anonymous mode is now available, which is reassuring, so I would definitely use it, but I think the fact that you need to use it is potentially troubling. So I definitely consider using Flow as a tracking tool for basic tracking and information, but definitely put anonymous mode on and make sure that you've read through our advice on data safety and protection before you decide to move forward. It has a really strong clinical background. It has clinical writers and scientific work involved in what they do, which is really positive. Users also find that their language is inclusive, which is also another really positive thing. But it does have aggressive subscription pressures, which users have commented on, and notifications that are quite anxiety inducing. And actually, this undermines the benefits of using a health app. Despite storing data under European privacy law, it continues to share data with advertising networks. So Clue has a strong medical foundation, but it could have a better execution. Women shouldn't have to fight against pressurized subscriptions and notifications just to access healthcare. So both of these apps score sort of average on our scoring system. So this doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. It just means that you should use them with your eyes open, and I'll attach the links to the full independent reviews so that you can read them below. Next question, can period apps help with conditions like PCOS or endometriosis? Yes, they can help as tools for tracking, but not necessarily for diagnosis. So for PCOS, tracking can be helpful in that you may be able to see patterns. Even though your cycles are irregular, over a period of time, you might be able to see how regularly irregular they are. So you might be able to build up a pattern, which can be helpful. It's also good to monitor things like your skin changes and your mood changes. And often if you bring that information to your health appointment, it's actually useful for your doctor to see that, especially if you've been able to do it over a long period of time. When it comes to endometriosis, some apps are good in terms of allowing you to symptom track. So you can add things in, you could keep it like a diary, but they're very much tracking tools. Some are for you to save your information to bring to a healthcare provider, which is good in one way, as long as you are happy with that app having access to that intimate health data, and also that you're confident in how they're using it. Now, when you go to your healthcare provider, it's good to have the symptoms mapped out. I think, if I can see something, a pattern emerging over years, 3 months, 6 months, a year, that is really helpful. It's very insightful for a doctor to be able to see that. What these apps are not is diagnostic tools. They're also not reliable for anything in terms of predictions. So I think, yes, they can help as long as you know what the limits are. The other thing I would say about this space is we are beginning to see emerging apps that are claiming to be specializing in conditions like polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis. When they say that, it's likely to be that they have advanced settings that allows you to symptom track, but just be mindful that they're not offering you a solution or a diagnosis through that. So again, going in with your eyes open and knowing what it's offering, what you're paying for it, and what they're doing with your information. So question 7, this is the one I said to tune in on. My app says I'm late, should I be worried? Stress, illness, sleep changes, weight changes, all affect your cycle length. If the app says that your period is late, what it's basically saying is your period hasn't arrived on the day that we've predicted. But as we've already said, the majority of apps predict the wrong date for your period. And so there's a couple of ways to think about this. If you've had unprotected sex and you genuinely think you're late, the sensible thing to do would be to take a home pregnancy test. If, however, you're not sexually active or you're on a reliable contraception, then a delayed period is most likely associated with one of those factors that we mentioned before, like travel, stress, changes in sleep, changes in weight, extreme exercise, etc. Your body's not designed to follow an algorithm, so it's really important that you use the algorithm to help your understanding and don't worry about your body not fitting the algorithm. So when should you see your doctor? Well, if your periods are irregular, they're really short, they're really long, they're heavier than normal, there's some other change, or you haven't had a period in 3 months, then you definitely do need to go and see your healthcare provider. Are period apps safe for teenagers? There's sort of 2 points to this. So we'll talk about data privacy first. So data privacy, many of the apps will collect the exact same information from a teenager as they will from a woman who's older. But there are apps that are protective of teenage girls and young women. Not all period apps are particularly designed for teenagers and young women. Some of them are very good at explaining and educating around periods and pregnancy and sexual health and all of those questions that young people have and sometimes find it difficult to ask an adult about. So one of the apps that we've reviewed is an app called Luna. It's particularly good for teenage girls. It has very strong data privacy and protection. It also has a feature where young women can ask questions of healthcare professionals online, which we really liked when we assessed it. The only thing we would say is it's slightly gamified, which means that it uses gaming type techniques, which usually are to keep people engaged with an app and aren't always proven to improve health outcomes. However, I think in this instance, if it's something that's helping a young woman to learn about her body, then it could be used in a really positive way. The other thing is it wasn't particularly accessible for young people with any sort of disability. But overall, our medical team found that it was a really solid choice for teenagers and young women. Again, I'll drop the link to our review below so that you can have a look at it. Apps and period trackers can be helpful for teenagers and young adults as long as they're chosen with a high level of care. What should I actually log to get the most out of my app? I think if you're just recording the days when you're on your period, you're probably missing out on building up symptoms that you're experiencing and tracking your own patterns. So, first day of your menstrual period, details on the flow. Is it heavy? Is it light? Did you have pain? If you had pain, where was it? How would you rate it? How would you describe it? And exactly where it is. Did it move? Was it static? What about your mood? I think the impact that it has on your daily life. Recording more in your app doesn't necessarily mean the app's predictions get better unless they're using that data in their algorithm. So research shows us that women track pretty inconsistently. And for some apps that will make a difference and for others it won't. It really depends on which features that you're recording that they're using in their algorithm. And also if they're not using in their algorithm, what are they using the information for? I think before you download it, I would be sure about exactly how your sensitive health information is being used. Number 10, what's the best period app right now? It's a great question. I get this one a lot, and here is my honest answer. It depends on what you're using it for. For general cycle awareness and good privacy, I would say Clue. So for contraception with clinical evidence, I would say Natural Cycles, but make sure that you're doing everything exactly as they said. For maximum data privacy and safety, Drip or Yuki. For teenagers, I would say Luna. It's medically approved information, really strong privacy policies, and it also has anonymous Q&A section, which for teenagers is really good. So for chronic conditions like PCOS or endometriosis, you could try Clue or a dedicated conditions app. App Store gives you user ratings, Reddit gives you anecdotes, and actually what women need is somewhere where they can go and find apps that have been rigorously assessed, where the privacy policies have been checked, and where they can find answers to simple things like, how is my data used? Can I trust the information that they give me? And does this app deliver on what it promises? That's why we've built She Ranked, a platform where we have a scientific framework. We assess the apps based on their data privacy, if they're medically accurate, are they accessible to all users? Is it going to have, a positive behavioural impact on women? And has it been ethically designed? You can access them for free through the link at sherank.com. The thing I want you to take away from today is that period tracking apps can be genuinely useful. They can be something that helps you to really tune in and understand your body, or even just pay more attention to your health and to your body. But they each come with their own risks. The risks aren't necessarily something for you to be afraid of, but there are something that you need to know before you make a decision. There are over 10,000 women's health apps on the market, and less than 200 of them provide enough information for women to genuinely make good, informed choices about the health tools that they use. Find something that works for you, but understand what its limitations are. Understand that it's a product, that if it's free, you are the product. And understand how your information is being stored, and more importantly, how it's potentially being used or misused. We covered a lot in this video, and if you've made it to the end, you have learned something that most women don't know. So pass it on, share it with a woman whose health matters to you. And if you love this investigative style approach to women's health, then do subscribe. If you have a question, drop it in the comments, and who knows, your question may just become next week's video. Hope it helps.